Yes, welcome back. Code with SJM here, and today we are going to continue with the second episode concerning our series of video that we were building a full stack application. And as I've mentioned before on my previous video, we are going to build a full stack application based on Tailwind, which we will have an AI feature integrated into our application. So we are going to build a smart expense tracking application, which AI will help us to have a smart way of creating budgets and recommending the appropriate budget based on the historical background of the spending nature or the spending behavior of the user. So in today's video, we will be focusing on starting to build the real application, because on the previous video, we do the demo, we started to set up the project, we did the setup, also we did the setup of our database connections, also we created the models and the migrations, we defined the relationships between those models, also we defined the helper methods on those particular models, which will help us to utilize the powerful features of models. So today we are going to focus on creating the Livewire components. So we are going to start with the component concerning with the categories, because on categories is the way that it will help us to organize budgets and expenses. So that is an important thing that is acting as a ground. So we need to start with that one. So before we go deep on that, let's start to register a demo user that we are going to use to perform the functionality. So it will be the one that we are going to test throughout the demo. So let's create that account. So here I'm using the form filler, which will fill the actually the dummy data. So you can see here, this is the password. So let's register. So this will create a new account and it will direct us to the dashboard, and that's when we are going to start to build the application. Yeah, so here you see we have been redirected to the dashboard, and we have the options to update the details, like you can change the name, email, you can delete the account, you can change the password if you want, and also you can be able to enable the two-factor authentication. So just add the password to confirm, and after that you will have an option to enable two-factor authentication. And if you don't know how to do this one, so I have a video on that, so you can just check it from the channel here. I already published it a couple of days before. So here you can see from here I have that video, which is this one. So you can just check it and you will see this was the Laravel 12 update that was updated. So you see it says how to enable two-factor authentication in your Laravel 12 application. So that will help you to go through that, so you can be able to enable this one. And also the users can be able to change the appearances of the application. So for now you see we are on dark mode, but you can switch to the light mode like this one. Also you can leave the system to decide. Okay, so for now let's stay with the dark one, and for the current now let's go to the VS Code here. As you can see, this is our application. Make sure it is running, so make sure you have run this command, so php @save, and also you have built the assets of your application by using npm run dev. Okay, after that let me create a new terminal, and from here I'm going to create a new Livewire component, which will be used to categorize or to manage the categories. Okay, so here I'm going to say php @make, then Livewire, then I'll give the name of the component, which should be categories. Okay. Oh, I've misspelled this one. This should be categories. So let me create another one. Categories. Yeah, this one. So let's remove this one, which has been misspelled. So let me start to remove the view, this one. So let's remove it. Yes. Okay, categories, this is the right one. Also here on the component class, so let's remove that. Yes. Okay, so now we have the categories component class, which is this one, and we have the blade file, which is this one. So if you have the Livewire Go to, you can just click this one. So just hold the control, then you click, then you will be directed to the same file. Okay, so that will be available if you have the extension called the Laravel Go to, which is this one. Okay, so that will help you to do that. Okay, so now as we have these two files, now let's start to update this categories component. So the first thing will be to define the public properties that we are going to utilize throughout this particular component. Okay, so the first public property that I'm going to define, so let me define the name of the category, so which should be an empty string. Also, we are going to have another one which should be public color, because on categories, as we've seen, we're going to have a way of identifying or categorizing our data based on their colors. So this will help us to identify the categories in a good way. So this will be the default color for all the categories when you are creating the categories. So this will be the default color. Okay, and after that, now let's add another public property, which should be public icon. So you can define the icon of the category. After that, let's define another flag which will help to track if we are editing or not. So editing ID, basically editing ID. So this will be the ID of the category that we are editing currently, and by default it should be null. And then we are going to have this flag which is will help us to track if we are doing the editing or not. Is editing, and by default it should be false. Okay, yeah, so those are the main public properties that we are going to have on this particular component. And then now let's define the colors, or the array of colors that we are going to have when we are doing the changing. As you can see from the demo, we have a way of switching between the colors. So here, let's define a couple of colors, and I'm going just to paste it here, because this I've already prepared it for you. So let me just paste it here. Okay, and I've tried to give the name of the colors so that you can remember which color and how they are supposed to be. So we have the red, orange, amber, yellow, lime, green, emerald, teal, we have cyan, sky blue, indigo, violet, purple, and we have this one, and those. Okay, so these are the colors that we are going to use when we are doing the following categories. Okay, and after that, now let's edit the render. So when we are doing the rendering here, basically we are supposed to define a way of getting the categories from the database. So for that, we are going to use the computed properties. So here we're just going to define a public function, then the method will be categories, okay, and then let's perform the functionality of getting the categories. So we are just going to say return, then we are going to get the category from the category model, and then we are going to say with count. Okay, and with count, then we are going to pass the expenses relationship. so it should count the expenses that are relating to this particular model. Okay, and after that we are going to say where the user that is editing, so user ID will be equals to the ID of the logged in user, means we are going to retrieve only the ID or only the categories that are relating to this particular user. So the user, one user cannot edit the categories of another user. Okay, and after that we're going to have another order by constraint, and here we're going to say order by name. So this means we are going to order by name of these categories, and after that we are going to retrieve them. So we are going to say get. Okay, but in order for this to be a computed property, so you need to use this attribute. So just to say computed, okay, and make sure you use this one. And after using it like that way, make sure you've imported it here, and make sure you've imported this category model. So this is the model, and from here we have this relationship called expenses. That's why we are calling it here. So make sure that you have already defined this relationship before you can utilize it here. Okay, so after that you can be able to call this one here. So we can just say categories. So you can just say categories. Okay, like this way. So this should not be a function. So this is actually a property. So it's actually a similar way that you can define just here, like you can define it and then call it in a mount function, and then you can assign it. But by using the computed way, this helps you for optimization, because it will just retrieve these details and then it will catch them so that you can use on the future users. So that's why we are using that, because it helps in a performance issue. Okay, so now we have the categories. So now you can be able to see the categories from here. So now in order for us to see if the categories are there, so let's try to do the for each row, and basically we don't have any category on our database, so basically we will not see anything. So let's start to update this page first, and then we will see while we are doing it. So from now, let's update the web.php so that we can reference that component here. So we're just going to say route, then you get, then we're going to say this is categories. So we're going to say categories, and then we are going to say categories. Let's reference the Livewire component, which is categories, then a class, then let's give it a name, which should be, let's say, categories.index. Okay, so it should be that way. And then now let's update the Livewire sidebar. So this is coming from the Livewire starter kit. So let's update so that it can be shown here. Okay, so let's go to the sidebar. Yeah, so here we have this group of listing. So now let's copy this one and paste it down, and then we are going to use this route, which is categories index. So let's copy that, and we are going to update this one. So update this one, which is on a H hyperreference, and also on a checking if this is the current URL. So we are going to update this one and this one. So to select both of these, so just select this one, make sure you have highlighted it like this way, and then Control D. So it will select all the text that match with the first text that you highlighted. Okay, so for now let's update only those two. Okay, and after that update this one to be categories. Yeah, so that is good. So for now let's go back and see here. So we have the categories, and let's see why this is refreshing. Yeah, so here you can see this is categories, and when you select that one, you should be redirected to the categories, but you will not see anything. And now we need to change this icon because that icon is not the one that you should use. So basically, I believe we can use the hero icon. And let's find a good icon to use there. So let's use the square, yeah, this one, the 2x2. So let's use that on our app here. So let's use that one, and now we should be able to see that icon updated here. Yeah, and here you can see the icon has been updated. So let me zoom a little bit so that you can see. So you see the icon now, it is using the new icon that we've used. Okay, so now we have the page, and you can see we have defined it here on our web.php. So means now this is a full page component. So make sure that you have defined it here. And when you give it a route like this one and make it a full page component, it should utilize the layout that is already defined from the application, which is already defined here on the component. Then layout here on app, we have the layout, which is app.blade.php, which is this one. And you can see currently we are using the sidebar, but you can change that to the header if you want, because Livewire Starter Kit give you these two. So you can see we have a way of using either the header or the sidebar. Okay, so means here if you change this one, let's say to header, so if you change that one to header, it should also change the layout here. Yeah, and you can see from here now the layout has been changed, and now we have only the dashboard, and we don't see the page that we have added for managing the categories. Why? Because we have only updated the sidebar and not the header. Okay, so if you want to add it to the header, so make sure that you just come here and update it like what we did from the sidebar. Okay, so now let's update this back to sidebar. So make sure it is using sidebar, okay, like this one. Okay, and now let's start to update the view for these categories. Okay, so now let me close this one and also the sidebar. Okay, so here we've already defined the categories. So now let's update this view so that we can see what we have created. So the first thing will be to show the categories. So I'm going to add the header for this particular page. So I'm just going to define an outer div, which is like this one. So let me just replace it. So we're going to have an outer div like that one, and then I'm going to close it like that one. Okay, and from there I'm going to paste the header. So we are going to have the header. So this will be the header that shows the categories. So now if you go back here, you should be able to see the header, and you can see the page now is shown like this one. And you can see this is the header with each simple or brief description. So that is this one, and you can see the background, it is a white, but on this header the background is a gradient from this grid to this one. So that's why you can see this grid coloration. Okay, so now make sure that this adapted to dark mode. So for example here you can say on dark mode the background can be, let's say, neutral of let's say 800. Okay, let's give it 900 so that it can match with the one that has already defined here. Yeah, so you can use that one. So this will be for background, I mean for the dark mode. And if you go to the light mode, it should be white. Okay, so if you go to the categories, now you see, so this is adapting well. Okay, let's go back to the dark mode. Yep, so let's go back here. All right, so after that, now let's have another div that will contain the message for showing the actually the message is if the data has been created successful or not. So or if there is an error, so it will be here. So here will be for messages, or you can just say the flash messages. Okay, yeah. So down here, let's add this div. Okay, and inside this div, basically you have to define this Tailwind CSS classes, which will help you to give the width that you need, the margin, and also the padding on your x-axis. Also, you are going to control that padding for small devices and also for the large devices. Also for the padding on your y-axis, so this is the right padding. Okay, so after that, here you will not see anything because we don't have anything inside it. So for now, let's paste these two. So here we're going to have if conditions. Okay, this if condition will check from the session if we have a message, and if we have a message means we are going just to show that message here. Okay, so this is the div that is going to be shown. Okay, so if we don't have the message, so means this div will not be displayed, and inside it we are going just to show this particular message. Okay, and from that message we are going to define this button, okay, which will help to remove that message if you want. So this will just call the on a click and it will say parent, then you remove that particular message. Okay, and this will be just for the correct message or the message that is successful. But for the error messages, we're going to use another if down here, and this will check if on a session we have error. So instead of message, here we will check if we have error. Okay, and from there, then we are going just to show the message here. See, so this will be the error message that we need to show, and here it will have this button which have this SVG icon for deleting or just for closing it. Okay, so this will be for an error. Okay, and after that, now we're going to have another div which will define the grid for our page. So let me just go down here, and we're going to have another div which will define the grids. So you can see here we are using the grid, and the grid columns will be 1 by default, but on the large screen it will be 3. Okay, and we are going to define the gap of 80 columns. Okay, or the column span. Okay, so after that, we are going to have two things inside this div. Okay, so the first one will be the edit or create form. So that will be on the first grid. So means here we are going to define something like this one. So we are going to have the create or edit category form. Okay, and after that we are going to have another one grid for category listing. Okay, listing, yeah, so this way. Okay, so for now let me paste the one for showing the form. Okay, so here we're just going to paste it like this way, and yeah, so this one. So you can see clearly from here, you see, so this will be the div which have this call span of 1, and as you can see here we are going to check if we are editing. So by using the flag that we defined here, which is this one, so if it is true, means we are doing the editing. So if we are doing the edit, the form or the heading of our form should be edit category. But if we are not editing, the form header should be create category. So now if you go back here, you should be able to see that form here. So you see, so now we are creating, so that's why you see create category. And down here you can see we have this form that we've already defined, and it is trying to submit it to the save function, which we are going to define it in a minute here. So we are going to define a public key function called the save. Okay, yeah, so that will be the function that we'll be calling here. So on Livewire, these are called the actions. So this will be the action where this form will be submitting to. Okay, and inside this form you can see we have the category name, where the name that you see here, where the user will be adding the name of the category. Okay, and as you can see, also we are going to have this one for showing that this field is required, as you can see. So this will be the asterisk that you see from the form. Okay, and for the text that is inside the field, we should make sure that it adapts to dark mode and light mode, because now you can see on dark mode you don't see it, okay, unless while you highlight it. So to make sure that this is adaptive to all the states, so let me just do the following. So we are just going to say on dark, so text should be the gray of, let's say, let's give it like 900, I guess. Yeah, so now if you type it, you should be able to see it. Okay, and also you can see you are able to change these colors, but you can see here on the preview it is shown. Why it is shown? Because here we have the color picker. Okay, and this color picker basically it just iterates through the colors that we have already defined here. So these are the colors, as you see. So these are the colors that it iterates to, and it is already available to these categories blade file. Why? Because Livewire gives you that ability by default. So when you just define the public key property, it is already available here. So that's why you see we have been able to access it from here. So we just run it for each on these colors, and then we get this color option, and from that color option we define the button, which will be the button that you see here. So these are the buttons. Okay, and these buttons, this color, they adapt it as the color that is coming from here. Okay, as you see, the first one is a red button, and you can see from here it is a red button. Okay, so that means this is coming from the component that we have already defined. And after that, when the user will click on this button, you see, so on wire click, you see we are going to call this method, which is called the set, and this will set the color, which means this is the property which is called the color. So it is going to change that to the color option that the user has selected. Okay, and after that means the color should be updated of this button. So how it is going to update it? It will be checked from here. So it will say if the color that is coming from here, it will be equal to the color option, means we are just going to add this ring, and we are going to do the offset, and then the ring should be of gray. So this will just for like adding the effect to the actually for the color that has been selected. Okay, so you can see, so for the color that has been selected, we have added this ring, and that ring will be removed when you switch the color. So only for the selected one you should be able to see that color. So if I switch, you see, so that ring has been removed from here, and you see it now in this particular color. Okay, so now already we have a way of changing the color, and if you didn't select the color, so this will be for showing the error. Whereas here we have already we didn't define the rules, but I'm going to show you how to define the rules in a minute. So another thing down here, it is a preview. As you see, this is the preview that shows the color that you selected here. See? So this is the color and this is the message. And this message should be populated here automatically, and you can clearly see it from here. Okay, so now let me just show you. So here down we see we have the form actions, which will be changing automatically or dynamic by checking the flag of if we are editing. So if we are doing the edit, the button should be cancel the edit, but if we are not doing the edit, so the button should be submit. So means we're just going to show this button dynamically. Okay, so for now let's add the listing here, and from that listing is where we are going to start to show you how to add the rules here, so that we can be able to see when we create the new category, we should be able to see it from this right side. Okay, and also you can update this one to adapt it to the dark mode actually. So to do so, you can just update its background color from here, you see. So you can just say on dark mode, the background color, let's say it should be of neutral of 800, which I believe should be looking good. Okay, and or you can just use gray if you want, so you can use gray. Yeah, and after that you can be able to update this text to make sure that they adapt it to dark mode. Okay, so for example, I can put this one to 400. Okay, and similar way to the other, so let's put them to 400. And also on this one, all right, so let's update the preview, its background. So this background should be, let's say, gray of, let's say, 700, and let's see how it looks like. Yeah, so this looks good. Yeah, so now we've updated this one to adapt it to dark mode, but you can switch that, let's say, to light mode and see how it looks like. Yeah, so you can see this is doing good, and this one why it does not update. Yeah, this should be on dark. Okay, yeah, so now it should adapt well. Yep, so now means if you put something there and change this one, so you should be able to see the preview here. Okay, so changing the color, see it is changing correspondingly. So now if we do the create for this one, let's say this is food and dining, and let's try to create. Yeah, so you see, so let's try to click create. Yeah, so this should not be working because we don't have the functionality of saving this data on our database. So the first step will be to first update the actually the rules for validation. So let me just define the rules here. So let me just say protected function rules. Okay, and then let's return the rules, which should be in array. Okay, and after that, this should be the rules that you should use. Okay, so here on rules, let me just collapse that one, and here on rules you can see we are checking for the name, and the name should be required. It should be a string. The maximum number should be this one, and we need to make sure that it is unique for the particular details. So it should be unique for the table of categories, and the name should be unique. We are going to check if we are doing the editing, so we don't want to make it to be unique. So that's why we see when we are doing the editing, so we are going to return null. But if we are not doing the editing, it should be unique. But then we need also to make sure that the ID is unique. Also, the user ID is unique by checking it with the ID of the corresponding logged in user. Okay, after that, also we need to make sure that the color is required and the icon is nullable. So means the user can add the icon or not. So you can see from here we don't have the icon, so that's why we need to make sure that this should be nullable. Okay, and after that, you can customize the way the messages for each of these rules will be defined, because in here you are just need to suppose to call this validate so that we can be able to validate our fields. So here means if you don't put anything here and try to create, you should be able to see the validation error. Okay, you see, so the name field is required. But if you wish to update this message to another way, so you can use another protected function and define the messages for each of these properties. So you just need to define the properties attribute and call it messages, and from here need to make sure that you define the name of the field that you are doing the validation to and the property or the rule that you are doing it. Okay, so for the required, you can just say please enter a category name. So instead of just showing a random message, so now it will show please enter a category name. So that will apply to other things. Okay, so if the name is should be unique, so you can just show this message. Okay, after that means these rules will be called when you call this then validate. Okay, so all the fields that are defined here on the form should be validated by Livewire automatically. So when you just submit it, they should be called here. Okay, and after that, now let's define the logic for saving and editing our data. Okay, so when you are doing the saving, so means you just need to do the create and then you have to create the data. But when you are doing the edit, that's when the new change should be. So here, when you are doing the create, so this should be for creating. You just need to call the category model and then call the create model, function, and from that function you need to pass the attribute in array. So this should be an associative array, and you should pass the user ID of the logged in user, because that is the user that will be creating the category. And after that, you need to define the name of that category, the color, and the icon if you have. And after that, we need to just to show the session flash. So we just need to say session, then flash, then we are going to flash the message, and we are going to say, let's say category created successfully. Okay, yeah, so something like that. Okay, and after that, now we need to reset the field when you done to create the data. So what you can do is just to call this then reset. Then inside this reset, you should be able to pass the array of fields that you need to reset. So we're going to reset the name, the color, the icon, and we're going to reset the editing ID, also the is edit. Okay, and these two we are going to see them in a minute when we start to edit the data. Okay, so for now let's just do it that way, and you should be able to create a new category here. So let's say education, and let's give it like this one. So this should be, and then let's try to create, and you see the category created successful, and you can be able to close that notification. So now we should be able to see the category from here, but for now you should be able to see it on database. And here you can see, so the color, you can see the icon is not there. You can see the name and the user ID. It is the ID of the user that has logged in. Okay, so now let's do the editing functionality. So the editing functionality will be making sense when we add the listing here. So now let's focus on adding the listing here. So let me just collapse this one because this is done. So now let's do the category listing. Okay, so let's do the category listing. Okay, so now let me go back up here and explain everything to you. Okay, so on category listing, we are going to have another call span of 2 because the first one was having the call span of 1. So here we are going to have the call span of 2. So means the grid should be divided to 3 parts. Okay, so the first side will be this one and the second side will be this one, but this one will be a little bit bigger compared to this one because this takes 2 spans, but this one takes 1 call span. Okay, and here you can see we have like a header. So this will be a header of let's say categories. So here it will say your categories, and after that it will show the number of categories that you have from the database. Okay, so remember this is the computed property that we have already defined here. Okay, so this is the public or computed property. So you can just call the count, and this count will count how many categories that you have in your database. And after that we are going to have the if condition to check if the count of categories is greater than 0. Means if we have any category from the database, that's when we are going to show the following div. So inside that div we are going to run the for each loop, which will loop through the categories, and we are going to get this object, and then from that object we are going to define this div, which inside it we are going to show the following details. So first of all, use this wire key, which will help Livewire to identify when you do any change on these categories. So it will keep the track of the IDs by using this key. Okay, and after that, down here you can see we are defining the color. So we just need to use this style, and from the style, and why we're using style, because this is the traditional way of using raw HTML. So we are going to use this is called the inline styling. So you just do the styling of HTML tag by using the inline styling. Okay, so just say the background color should be the color that you defined from here. Okay, so that color that you've passed here, which is this one, will be the one that should be shown here. Okay, and after that then we are going to have the background color again. So here we will see how this looks like, because this will be the one will be for text and another one will be for the wool background. Okay, so we are just going to see it from here. You can see, so we have this outer one and this inner one. Okay, so you can see the outer one at the end we are adding the 20 so that we can reduce the value of that color. Okay, so and after that down here we are going to show the name of that particular category, and down here we're going to say we're going to show the expenses count. So from here the expenses count, as you see, this is coming from the categories model. So what you do, basically, because we have already defined this relationship, and when we were doing this computed property, if you remember, we called this with count, and then we get to the expenses. So basically Laravel will give you this way of doing this and get the count of that particular let's say relationship. Okay, so the relationship was expenses, so when you do the underscore count, so it should be able to give you the number of expenses that exist from this category or that are related to this particular category. Okay, so after that this will be the count, but here it should be the plural name of that particular expense. So if it is just one expense, so it should be expense, but if they are more than one, so this should be expenses. So this is just a helper method which will help you to get the plural form of this particular expense. Okay, so now you see here we have 0 expenses, and if you have more than one, you should be able to see that from there. Okay, so here, as you can see, we are now able to edit this one, and when you click this one, it should be able to populate it here, but now it is not populated here. Why? Because we didn't create that functionality. So you can see the error that we get, so means we have not defined the edit method. So now let's define that very quickly, and let's see how it will look like. Okay, so let's go back here, and here we're just going to define the following method, which is called the edit, and from this method you can see we are accepting the category ID as from here. When you click this edit button, which is this one, so we are passing the edit the ID of that particular category, and this will send that request to this particular action or method which is already here. So after that we are going to accept that parameter, and then we are going to get the category by finding or fail that particular ID, and then that category that we have get, we are going to see its user ID. So if its user ID is not matching with the ID that of that particular logged in user, so we are not going to, we are just going to abort the request, and we are going to say that this user does not have let's say correct or is not authorized to access this particular edit page. Okay, and after that we are just going to populate the ID from the category ID. We are just going to populate it to this one. So this is the one that we defined here, and make it to be null by default. And after that we are going to populate the name so that it will be added to the form, and then we're going to populate the color icon, and we are just going to set this one to true because this is the flag. By default it is false, but now we are going to test to make it to be true. So now if you go back here and click edit, now you should be able to see that name here, and you can see the color has been populated, and also here. And then you see now we have this cancel button because we are doing the editing. So now when you click this update field, it should call the save button again, but when it calls the save button again, now we should be able to update that data through the save function. So when you click the cancel, currently it should not do anything because we didn't define the method for cancelling the edit. So what we are going to do is to define this method. So let me just define that method quickly. So let me define it down here. So just say public function, then console edit. Okay. And from this console edit, we are just going to reset the fields as we did here on save. So let me just copy this one. And after that, we're just going to reset back the color. So let's say this color that we have defined up there, and then we're going to return it to the default color. Okay. So if you remember, the default color was this one. So we're just going to return it back to this one. Okay. Here. Okay. So now let's go back here. Yep. And now if we click edit and click cancel, now you see, so everything has been returned to the original state. So now let's update the save function to adapt to this change that we can be able to update the category. Okay. So here, let's go back to the save, and on save function, what we are going to do is to add an if condition here. Okay. So this if condition is going to check if we are doing the editing. Okay. So if we are doing the editing and we have the editing editing ID, okay, then we are going to do the category, okay, and then we need to get that category by using the find or fail. Okay, so we're just going to use the particular editing ID, okay, which we've already defined it from here. So this we've populated it from here. Okay, and after that, after getting the particular category, then we're going to have another if condition where we are going to check if the category user ID, so user ID, it is not matching the ID of the logged in user. Yeah, like that one. So if it is not matching the ID of the user, so we just need to say abort. Okay, the same thing as we did here. So let me just copy that and paste it here. Okay, so we need to abort it, and the user will see that they don't have authorization access to that editing functionality. And after that, now let's update the category. So we just need to say category, then you need to call the update method, category, then update, and here you should be able to update all the fields that the category have. Okay, now we are going to update the name to this name that is here, and then we're going to define we're going to update the color from this color and the icon from this icon. Okay, and after that we are going to say, basically we are just going to do the flashing here. So let's say session flash, then we're going to say message, okay, and then the message should be category updated successfully. Okay, yeah, so this will be only for if we are doing the editing. So for a good way of doing this, because after updating this one, we also need to reset these fields. So what we are going to do, so instead of redoing the resetting here, so we can just say here we can have else condition, and from this else block we can just put this one. Okay, we can just define that inside there. Let me push this one to here. Okay, so this will flash for the category created, and after that we can be able to reset the password for all. So whether you are doing the editing or you are doing the creating, so this reset will be done after performing any of these two actions. Okay, so after that we should be able to edit our category, and that functionality should work. Okay, after that let's finish with the delete method. So let's define the delete functionality, because now we have this delete button, but it is checked here, so you will only have the ability to delete if the expenses count is equals to 0, as I've showed you on the demo. Okay, so when this is not let's say it is below 0 or it is above 0, so means you are not going to be able to delete it. So it will just show you that you cannot delete the category with expenses. So here let's define the delete method. So we're just going to say function, no, should be start with public. Okay, public function delete, and here we're going to get the category ID, and from there we're just going to say category, then we will find it or fail, and then we are just going to say if the category and then the user ID, if it is not equals to the logged in user ID, okay, if it is not equals to that one, just abort the functionality of editing data, so prevent the user from updating that data or deleting it. So let's do the 403. Okay, and after that, now let's do the check for, let's say check if category has expense. So as expense, and after that let's have an if. So we are just going to say category. Okay, then expenses count is greater than 0. Okay, so if it is greater than 0, so we're just going to say, just do a flash here. So let me copy this and paste it here. So this should be error. Okay, and then we are going to say cannot delete category with existing expenses. Okay, yeah, this way, and then we need to stop this from running, so we're just going to return nothing. Okay, so this will just stop this delete functionality from continuing. Okay, and if that's not the case, means we need to delete the category, and then we need to flash the message, and we are just going to say the category has or deleted successful. Okay, so that's all concerning with this one. So now let's test the functionality. So let's create a new category. So let's say food and dining. Okay, let's give it this one. So let's click this one and then create. Yeah, you see. So now the category has been created, and you can see this is the category, and actually they look better when you do this on dark mode. So let's go back to the categories, and you see, so this one we need to make it to adapt to the dark mode. So let's go to the listing, and from here you see the background. So let's give it background should be like gray, and it should be, let's say, gray of 800. And now let's see how it looks like. Yep. So now on the hover, now let's update the hover action. So this is the hover action. So let's do the one for dark. So hover, then the background should be the gray of, let's say, 700, I guess. Let's see. No, this is not. Yeah, so at least this one. Okay, yeah. But now let's update this text. So let's give it a 400. I guess 400 is good on dark or light mode. So that one is good. Also this one. Now on this one. Okay, and expenses. So the number of expenses here, this one should be 400. Okay. Yep. So now this works well. Now let's update these ones. And also for this one. Okay. And on hover, I guess that's fine if we can leave this one. Okay. So now we've seen a way of editing, and when you do the editing, for example, when you do this editing, now you should be able to change, let's say, color. Okay, and when you do update, now you see category updated successfully, and you can see the color has been changed. Now let's test it for the deleting. So let's try to delete this one. So you see, are you sure do you want to delete this category? So delete, and you can see the category deleted successfully. So that's all concerning with this categories component. So this is done for now, and now let's see you on the next session where we'll be building the next category, the next component, which will be the one for expenses. So see you on the next video where we'll be doing that. Okay.